put the bowl there, okay? I did not put the bowl there. I would not do this.
And police discovered fingerprints on a bowl of pineapple left in the family's dining room on the morning of the murder.
I didn't put the bowl there, okay? I did not put the bowl there. I would not do this. Like this.
If those prints belong to one of the two.
They did? You sure?
What about Christmas Eve? When you were going up there, did you guys have a snack before you went to bed that night?
I forget.
What was JonBenét's favorite snack?
I don't think she had it.
Hello, welcome to my channel, Straight Out of Context. I am Barbara Ann, and this is Pineapple Gate. If you have not been following for the last 28 years the unsolved murder case of JonBenét Ramsey, then you probably wouldn't be familiar with what Pineapple Gate is. December 26th of 1996, 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey of Boulder, Colorado was found deceased in the basement of her own family home. But her autopsy showed that she had undigested pineapple, not canned pineapple, pineapple with the rind still in her stomach, meaning that she had eaten pineapple within 20 to 30 minutes, likely of her becoming deceased. Another really big forensic clue in this whole entire case was an unidentified flashlight that was left standing upright on the counter inside the kitchen of the family home. Now, the family had come back home that night. JonBenét was asleep, and they carried her up to her bed. Next thing they know, the very next morning at 5:50 a.m., her mother, Patsy, goes down the spiral staircase and finds a 3-page ransom note. And at exactly 5:52 a.m., she calls the Boulder Police Department. Investigators found the fingerprints on a glass with a tea bag in it belonging to her 9-year-old brother Burke, but also found fingerprints on the outside of that bowl that belonged to her 9-year-old brother Burke and her mother Patsy. As far as we know today, DNA has never been done on the glass, the bowl, or the spoon, and they have never even released whether or not they did any kind of fingerprinting on the spoon itself. The Ramseys were very known for decorating around the holidays. Not just one room, all of them. JonBenét was known to absolutely love fresh pineapple, cut apples, and grapes. It was said to be her favorite snack. Now, this is the Ramsey kitchen completely cleaned up, and on that counter is where that huge Maglite flashlight was standing straight up that did not belong to anybody in the family. But Pineapple Gate is in reference to what is going on here. Did she eat that after she came home? It's not possible because her mother and father said that she was asleep. She fell asleep in the car and they had carried her in and placed her in bed. And the next thing they know, the next morning, well, everybody knows what happens from there. So there's a lot of theories on whether or not the intruder was somebody that was known to JonBenét and if he had fed her pineapple before then taking her downstairs to the basement and offending. And you got to remember, their house was over 6,300 square feet. It was a very large house, and the parents' bedroom was on the 3rd floor on the other side of the house, opposite of where this would have been taking place. So it's very possible that the intruder was somebody that she knew, or somebody that was dressed up as Santa Claus, which any child would trust. Or it could have been somebody that was just had tased her, because the taser marks don't make any sense. Why tase a child unless you're afraid they're going to respond and be screaming or upset because you're a stranger and they don't know you? So the whole thing has been very bizarre from the beginning. Investigators of Boulder, Colorado had completely botched this case from day one. They never even traced the pineapple, the fresh pineapple, to the source. So they had no idea if the perpetrator had brought it into the house or if it was used by the perpetrator, but it was already from inside the house. And as you can see in this picture of them dyeing Easter eggs, they almost always kept fresh fruit on the table or counter inside their home. This is a crime scene photo. That flashlight right there is the one thing other than a rope upstairs that they completely could not identify as having been belonging to anybody inside the home, which leads me to believe that flashlight was the perpetrator their way of being able to see when they got inside the house. Now, it's debatable whether or not that person was inside the house for hours while the Ramsey family was gone and they were laying in wait until they were asleep to then go upstairs and tase JonBenét and then take her downstairs. But either which way, it doesn't make any sense, because if she didn't know, how would an unknown perpetrator be able to get her to comply to eat pineapple? But there's another theory that people didn't think about. The fact that that pineapple in that tea could have been Burke's, because Burke was not asleep and he was 9 years old. And he said that it was possible that he came downstairs and that maybe he had a midnight snack, hence why his fingerprints are on the glass and the outside of the bowl. And maybe JonBenét had woken up and come down and just willingly was eating some pineapple when her intruder came up from the basement. That's maybe when the intruder tased her and then took her down. The intruder theory makes a lot more sense, but that theory is not plausible either, because there was a rope that the intruder brought into the house and left on the second story where JonBenét's bedroom was. We're thinking that rope may have been not sufficient to tie her up or to make the knots that he wanted, and that's why he left the rope upstairs. So it's likely probable that the intruder was somebody she didn't know or was not familiar with, and he had tased her to incapacitate her and keep her quiet just so she didn't alert her parents on the third story in their bedroom. And it's very well possible this pineapple was just something that she had gotten up and eaten herself. Or if she did know the intruder being known to her would have very nicely been able to get her to eat a snack and act like nothing was wrong. Especially if the intruder would have been dressed like Santa Claus. Any child on Christmas Day would go to Santa Claus. It has been my opinion, my own personal opinion, for the entirety of this unsolved case, that it truly was a PDF file, an intruder who broke into the home and unalived JonBenét Ramsey. I want to know what you think about Pineapple Gate and what you think about the evidence surrounding the JonBenét case. And I want to know what you think. Who do you think it was that did it? The only thing that I ask of you is, if you deep dive into this case, please only look at facts and true evidence. Do not look at 28 years of media scrutiny and lies and misinformation that has surrounded this case, because the Boulder police wanted to deflect and negate from the fact that they botched this entire investigation from the very moment they were called into the home. They wanted to put the spotlight on the Ramsey family themselves, but in 2009, they were completely cleared by DNA. Yes, there was DNA on JonBenét's panties in the vaginal area mixed with her blood. There was DNA found on the waistband of her pajama pants. However, that DNA did not match anybody in her family. It is a foreign male DNA, and from my understanding, I heard before that it was Caucasian, but do not quote me on that because that is alleged. So they can tell a lot by that DNA, even if they don't have a match to it. If it was an outsider who was feeding JonBenét pineapple, why would he be in her bedroom on the second story and leave the rope that he brought with him? Why would he leave his flashlight on the counter? Why would he need to tase her to incapacitate her, to keep her quiet, to then take her downstairs to the first floor and then down to the basement where I believe the crime actually happened? All I know is that to this day, there is a very strong likelihood and possibility that the perpetrator and the offender of this crime can and will be caught. But it is up to the Boulder Police Department to turn over that DNA to her father and her living siblings, and to CC Moore, who she can actually do a reverse family tree by a very distant or close family DNA match, and she would be able to catch this person the same way she caught the Golden State Killer. Maybe one day we will actually know what's behind the mystery of Pineapple Gate.
This is a perfect place to go in because nobody can see me.
According to Smith, there are signs that someone had disturbed the leaves in the window well, and of what he calls finger marks on one of the window panes, possibly from someone wearing a glove. He also points to what he believes to be a shoe scuff on the wall. And he says there are imprints of a high-tech brand boot, apparently not owned by any family member, in the wine cellar where JonBenét's body was found. And he says a suitcase placed under the window to help an intruder get out. Wouldn't there have been footprints then on the suitcase?
The Ramseys have been telling the truth all along.
If anyone knows anything, please help us.
The idea that two God-fearing people decided daughter by taking her to the basement, sectioning her, straight to death, and then in the head? I mean, come on.
JonBenét was a pedophile come true. The brutality of the claim that this man is a sadistic pedophile. I believe he brought her down to the farthest, deepest part of that basement and did very brutal things to her.
Where showed a mixture of DNA, partly her DNA and a minor contribution from somebody other than her.
The DNA results specifically stated that the source of that DNA on her underwear were not from anybody in the Ramsey family. Not her, not Patsy, not John, not anybody in the Ramsey family. It's a monster that did this. We need to look at other people that were in and around the Boulder area December 25th, 26th of 1990.
Any ideas who this could be? Bill McReynolds.
He certainly showed up on the Today Show a week later. Right the number of it.
I adore the family. They adopted me as a member of the family, actually. We don't celebrate children enough, Katie.
I am Barbara Ann, and welcome to my channel, Straight Out of Context. This is the unsolved case of JonBenét Ramsey, and we're going to discuss the four most likely suspects. This is Santa Bill, also known as Bill McReynolds. He was a very close friend to the Ramseys. He played Santa at all of their Christmas get-togethers, but he also played Santa Claus on TV. He was said to have had a very close bond with JonBenét because she believed him to be the real Santa Claus. Exactly 22 years to the date of JonBenét's unsolved murder, Bill McReynolds' daughter, when she was very young, and her friend came up, never caught the person, but one of the little girls had been. Detectives had also found out that Bill McReynolds' wife had written a play about a very young little girl who is in the basement of her own home. The coincidences seem to add up.
That would, in my mind, explain how, if we said JonBenét Pineapple between 19 when she went to bed. You know, we were suspicious of Rick Reynolds, I guess, in the beginning, and he came to the memorial service. A good friend of mine who was there said, you guys need to go back and look at that video because when Patsy went to hug him, pushed her away. That is the only way it's possible to be that someone she knew and trusted was going to come upstairs and be surprised. Why they would have sat and had pineapple and a glass of tea, I don't know.
Bill McReynolds and his wife were ultimately excluded as suspects because they cooperated with investigators, handing over handwriting samples, hair, and the fact that Bill himself had just had very invasive heart and lung surgery really ruled him out as being physically capable of carrying out what happened that night. University of Colorado campus police contacted the Boulder police when they found a 38-year-old trespasser with a backpack, but what was in the backpack was so concerning. This is Gary Oliva. He actually had a stun and a love poem written to and about JonBenét in his backpack. He was a convicted child in the state of Oregon, and he tried to unalive his mother by stringing a telephone cord. He lived in a homeless church only 10 houses away from the Ramsey home and was in that area on December 25th and December 26th of 1996. He had created a shrine to JonBenét, including pictures of her face being pasted onto Monopoly money. And what's even more creepy is exactly a year later, he shows up to the candlelight vigil for JonBenét, marking the 1 year since. And this is the shocking part. As of 3 days ago, he is completely gone since Netflix had posted their new documentary. Gary Oliva is just disappeared and nobody can find him. And we are suspecting that's because of the renewed interest in this unsolved case. Could he really be guilty? And is this why for the past 72 hours he has been completely MIA? On Valentine's Day of 1997, this man who owned a junkyard in part with his two brothers committed an act of self-violence. This suspected self-unaliving of 26-year-old Michael Helgoth. A friend of his later came forward and had stated that he loved to assault, especially cats. He had been prosecuted for the SA of a very young child. A former girlfriend of his caught him naked, her very young daughter, under a blanket, where he then tells his girlfriend that, quote, "I cannot trust myself with her." He goes on to tell his friend that he always fantasized about human skull and wanting to know what that was like. He also admits to this friend that he and an acquaintance of his were going to come into some money by December of 1996, and he alluded to about $50,000 or $60,000 apiece. Now, this is only interesting because the ransom note to the Ramsey family was demanding $118,000. When that friend checked up with him, he said that it went south and it never came to fruition. This big plan that they had to come into this money. But the disturbing part of Michael Helgoth's unaliving of himself was in the fact that he had multiple prescriptions, but he also had a high-tech boots. And those high-tech boots, those black boots you see right there, are exactly the type of boots that they found prints of at the Ramsey house. But everybody has been very suspicious of this because he was right-handed and it looked like he had been unalived through a pillow. And if he lived alone, very far away from anybody else, why would he be worried about the noise or do it through a pillow? This is one of those prints for the high-tech boot. And right there, you can see his stun. Usually people don't unalive themselves through a pillow and with their non-dominant hand. So it's always been very suspicious. Boulder police have always said that the DNA didn't match, but they've never actually released any evidence of that. This is Michael Tracy. He is a journalist, an expert on the case, a documentary maker. He's a friend of the Ramsey family, and he's also a journalism professor at the University of Colorado. He had been receiving emails from somebody calling himself Daxis. Over time, these emails got weirder. He completely admitted to unaliving JonBenét. His favorite age is 6. He was telling him details, intimate details of the crime. And with her cancer coming back, was insisting on having a direct link to Patsy Ramsey. But he got cold feet when he actually had the ability to do that. So police had Michael Tracy do it instead. In those recorded calls, he admits to being in a heated, passionate trance and unaliving JonBenét. This man ends up being John Mark Carr, a U.S. citizen and very young age school teacher who was married twice, once to a girl. And in 2001, in North Carolina, he was actually convicted of 5 counts of possession of child P. He then flees the country, where he then moves to Bangkok, Thailand. He was later extradited to the U.S. And police have ruled him out because he wasn't actually in Boulder at the time of JonBenét's unaliving. He still to this day alludes to being involved.
The monster. It's the monster. He is a dirty, child-raping monster.
Hello, my name is Stephen Redfern, and I serve as the police chief for the city of Boulder, Colorado. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Boulder Police Department to give an update on the investigation into the murder of JonBenét Ramsey. As many of you know, this horrible crime happened in December of 1996, and our officers responded to investigate. While I was not at Boulder Police 28 years ago, I have worked in policing for more than 20 years, and I want to assure you that our agency is committed to doing everything we can
Are
to
you?
bring justice to
Are
JonBenét
you?
and hold her killer responsible. So much of how law enforcement works has changed in the last 30 years. There are a number of things that people have pointed to throughout the years that could have been done better, and we acknowledge that is true. However, it is important to emphasize that while we cannot go back to that horrible day in 1996, our goal is to find JonBenét Ramsey's killer. Our commitment to that has never
If
wavered.
that was possible, we would all be
For
stopping
years,
them before
our detectives
they
have
occur.
partnered with multiple agencies across the country, including our federal and state partners like the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, as well as several outside forensic labs and DNA experts, to evaluate the latest advancements in technology, viable tips, and investigative leads. Our collaboration also includes the Colorado Cold Case Review Team, which is a panel of outside experts brought together in December of 2023 to review this case,
A year ago.
generate additional investigative recommendations, and determine if updated technologies and or forensic testing might produce new intelligence or leads to solve this case.
Like CC Moore?
That review took a
Ancestry
year to
DNA
prepare
matches,
for,
possibly?
and included an intensive effort to digitize all evidence to create a comprehensive and searchable database containing thousands of information files.
Good.
Those files include more than 21,000 tips, over 1,000 interviews, which were conducted across 17 states and 2 foreign countries, samples from more than 200 different individuals, including handwriting, DNA, fingerprints, and shoe prints, nearly 2,500 pieces of evidence, and roughly 40,000 reports, with more than 1 million pages documenting the investigation. A fresh inventory of all collected evidence was made available for investigative review, which would not have been possible without the assistance of the FBI. The Cold Case Review Panel gave us a lengthy list of recommendations, which we are continuing to work through and evaluate. And though that review may have ended, our collaboration with those entities continues to this day.
Good.
I know that our community would like to know more information and specifics on our progress, but like any major criminal investigation, there is no way that we can share that information publicly
It's a cold
without
case.
compromising the integrity of this case and any future prosecution by the district attorney's office. What I can tell you, though, is that we have thoroughly investigated multiple people identified as suspects throughout the years, and we continue to be open-minded about what occurred as we investigate the tips that come in to detectives. I can also tell you that detectives are regularly investigating some aspects of this terrible crime, and I receive updates frequently. We are hopeful that the renewed public attention will generate more tips, and we encourage anyone who has any information to contact our detectives at the following email: bouldersmostwanted@bouldercolorado.gov. In the interest of transparency, I also think it's important for the community to know that our department has had ongoing conversations with JonBenét's family, the last of which occurred in mid-2024, and we are committed to continued open dialogue. JonBenét would have been 34 years old this year.
Yeah,
She
would.
deserved to grow up and live her life to the fullest.
Yeah, she did.
Instead, it was brutally taken from her.
It was.
Of course, those who loved and knew JonBenét continued to grieve. This crime also
people
haunts
around
the
the
Boulder
world.
community, especially every officer and detective who's ever been a part of this investigation. Every single one of them thinks about her and would love nothing more than to bring justice to her memory. I know the Boulder Police Department has not talked a lot about this investigation publicly, but that's, again, because no one wants to jeopardize any potential prosecution of a suspect. We must constantly balance the release of any information in an active and open investigation with the public's right and desire to know what's going on. To the extent that news coverage, documentaries, and miniseries keep JonBenét's memory alive and could perhaps spark new information, we welcome any coverage that might allow us to finally bring the killer or killers to justice.
If they're alive.
At the end of the day, we must not
It's
forget
been 28
that
years.
regardless of everything that has or has not transpired since 1996, a 6-year-old girl is dead, and we will continue to do everything in our power, along with our partners, to solve this case. Ideally, we would be able to go back and prevent this awful crime from happening, but sadly we cannot. However, moving forward, we're committed to investigating every tip and lead that comes our way. I beg anyone that has information that has not been previously shared with us to contact us, and that includes those responsible for this crime. Please help us in our efforts to secure justice for JonBenét.
Hi everybody, I'm Barbara Ann and welcome to my channel Straight Out of Context. I want to share this with you because People Magazine just ran this yesterday in the afternoon, and this is an update on JonBenét Ramsey investigation. Police admit certain things could have been done better. The killing of JonBenét was an unspeakable crime, and this tragedy has never left our hearts, Boulder Police Chief Steve Redfern has said. He offered an update this week on the cold case unaliving of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey as the 28th anniversary of her unaliving approaches. The Boulder Police Department provided an annual update on the ongoing investigation. The unaliving of JonBenét was an unspeakable crime, and this tragedy has never left our hearts. He posted on X, formerly Twitter. And this is all what you just saw right there. And I just want to reiterate that while this documentary that just was released on Netflix is not the first one that they've done in the last 3 years about JonBenét, in fact, there has been several released in the last 5 years on JonBenét on multiple different video streaming services. And I do give them kudos now for having released that, because at least that's a step in the right direction to try and appease the public and try to at least give some comfort and solace to her family and siblings, where her dad has become to very age and may not live to see this person be caught. Her siblings still will be alive. So will Lou Smith's daughters. So will other people that have followed this crime since they were young, like me, because I'm the same generation and age of JonBenét. I literally grew up with this case. That's why I tell everybody when I talk about it, this case is very personal to me. Because the entirety of my childhood and teen years, I could not go to a single liquor store, party store, grocery store, bodega, anything without having seen that little girl's face plastered everywhere. And the reason why they're making that announcement is because of people like me who have worked tirelessly to tag them in the fact that her father offered to pay for a third-party, independent, unbiased lab, and CC Moore offered her services to come in and try and find an ancestry DNA match, the same way she caught the Golden State unaliver and other unsolved case perpetrators. I have also tagged them in my shorts and videos that I have done, hence why they came out with this public statement. And I'm glad they did. This is not the first, nor is it the last documentary that has been made about this case. However, I am really happy that this one has renewed a large public interest in it. That's always a good thing. But I have been tagging them since 2019, the Boulder Police Department, in the fact that they should give that DNA profile over to a third-party lab or her father or CC Moore, or bring them on, because she has offered her services to try and help them find an ancestry match to the perpetrator. If that is possible, that is assuming that the DNA profile that they have is her actual unaliver. But you wouldn't know if you don't actually run it up against any kind of possible matches ancestral wise. And they did release this because I myself have been putting pressure on them for 5 years. 5 years. This is a good one, since this is all the rage right now with the new Netflix documentary about the unsolved homicide of JonBenét Ramsey. I don't know if you remember, but Geraldo Rivera did a mock trial. Not a real legal trial, a mock trial on his show, where the people concluded that, of course, the parents had to have been the ones to do it. But you gotta see this.
But for the first time, we have John Ramsey and Geraldo Rivera to discuss how far we've come and how far we need to go. John, thank you very much for taking this opportunity.
How about the Boulder police just do their job and allow CC Moore to help?
Life, but I know you want closure and you want the truth to come out. So thank you for being here. Geraldo, as always, what is your perspective now as we have John Ramsey here about where your head was when you did that mock trial and where you are today?
I hope John Ramsey lives to be 110.
Well, mock trials and moot courts, as you know, Chris, are not that unprecedented. They're not that extraordinary. And I'll get to the conclusion they reached in a second. But let me just say to John Ramsey that I deeply apologize to you for what you and your family have suffered, how you have lost your wife to cancer, one child to that terrible car crash, and of course what happened to JonBenét, 6 years old, who would now be 34 years old, which is an incredible fact, how long this case has been front row center in the American consciousness. So when I say I am sorry, I don't apologize for my reporting. I believe that at least half the reporters and half the nation believe that the shadow of suspicion, half the Boulder Police Department, at least those who have not retired or those who have retired because of this case, believe it. But I don't know what happened. I just want you to know that I lament contributing to the hurt that you have endured. I don't think no one deserves to go through what you went through. That's my bottom line. And when I walk around, and it is with like yours in my head over the last 54 years of my career, it is a burden to me. It's a soulful burden. And again, man to man to you, I apologize, and I am sorry for everything you have gone through.
John,
well, thank you.
What do you have to say, and what do you want people to know about what needs to happen?
Well, we want two things to happen. You know, we've been critical of the police for 28 years for not accepting help.
And rightly so.
This case could have been solved a long time ago, in my opinion, had the police not immediately focused on Patsy and I and only focused on Patsy and I. You know, we accepted that and told them, look, okay, we understand that. We are in the house, so we're suspect. But don't stop there. And they did. And in fact, they released, I haven't seen this documentary, so I don't know fully what's in it, but they documented, I think, the police fed false information, misleading information to the media about our potential guilt before even the evidence had been recovered and looked at. And their theory was that, okay, we think it's one of the parents, it's always the parents. We just don't know which one, so let's bring intense pressure on both of them. The innocent one will turn the guilty one in, case solved. That was the whole strategy. That was confirmed to us by the DA several years later. That was their strategy to solve the case. They knew the answer, they just didn't know which one. Intense pressure, one of the innocent could confess or turn the guilty one in, and the case would be solved. That would be easy. And, of course, the media ran with it big time. It was juicy and sensational. And it was pretty bizarre in our country. This would not happen in England. People go to jail for what was done in our case. Police releasing false information, the media running with it, trying us in the court of public opinion. That's primitive behavior for society, and the media was disgraceful, quite frankly, in our case. But they were fed by a even more disgraceful police department, and they ate it up.
You had said at the time, and this is unusual. Geraldo will know this even better than I. Very rare for a local police department that does not have a lot of experience processing these kinds of cases to reject outside help, especially from the feds. Usually it's a statewide task force, but for the feds to come in and offer resources and it be turned away is almost unprecedented. Quickly, John, you believe that the DNA that they had available at the time now has new processing application, and you want that done. Explain.
Let me first say, Geraldo, I accept your apology and thank you. What we want done, there's two things we want done. We want the evidence that has been previously tested and never tested. We think there's some that has never been tested. We don't know that for sure, but it appears that's the case. We want that resampled by one of the cutting edge labs that's out there. It's not gonna, the government, I don't think, has the technology yet to do it. An Othram Labs, a Bodie Labs, those are really cutting edge labs. Bodie did the original testing back in 1997. They came up with unidentified male DNA, still unidentified. The police, that was a real problem for the police because they already decided that we were the killers. Like, how do we explain away this unidentified DNA? And they tried for a long time to find an innocent explanation. The reason we need to retest is in order to, it plays into the second thing we want done, and that is to use this familial genealogy research approach to find the killer. And that's been wildly successful in some old cold cases. To do that, they need covered it. Yeah, no, it's fascinating what's been done. But to do that research, they've got to have a different format for the DNA than what was submitted to the federal database. And I don't understand that, but that's what I'm told. So the retesting needs to be done. Hopefully we get a good sample and in the right format that then they could do the genealogy research. And I believe if we do that, there's a really good chance we can solve it. But if we don't,
well, we will be pushing for exactly that. We will stay on it. And
that's what we've been doing for 5 years, trying to get the Boulder police to do exactly
really
that.
What you said to John.
That's what everybody's been trying to get them to do. How can a police department completely fuck up and botch the unsolved homicide of a 6-year-old girl
individuals
for 28 years?
This long after, do you believe that a case like this can be solved?
The Boulder police contradict or counter John and say that there's no test that can be done that has not been done within reason.
False.
I don't know. It would seem to me, 28 years later, there's no other suspect has come forward. No one, the people that they have named, the pedophiles living in Thailand and the other miserable creatures, the people who took sexual pleasure from the pictures of these children at these events that JonBenét participated in, and a lot of I think the heavy lifting that the Ramseys had in terms of their innocence was. The intruder evidence was pretty sparse. No one else has come forward as a suspect.
But they haven't done the genealogy testing that we've seen in other cases.
All I know is that the Boulder police have said they've done it. Listen, I hope you find justice.
Here's the fact.
I hope this person is.
Right. Within the last
Go ahead,
year,
make the last point, John.
An oversight committee in the Boulder Police recommended immediate termination of 5 of their 7 detectives, one of whom was a detective that worked on our case. And he was a roadblock. He was worthless. He was in charge of our case for 25 years. He was a former auto theft investigator. To think that they have done all that could be done is